can't tell if this is working yet. There we go. Wait, something's happening. Well, I can't tell if this is working yet, but YouTube is really bad at letting you know if the stream is working. And now it says that I'm live. And I'm still not getting any indication that I'm actually live streaming. Okay. So whenever I start doing this, I have to just start, I'm staring at a blank screen, and I just start talking like, I don't know if I'm live streaming yet, because my worst case scenario is it doesn't include it, and my best case scenario is it does include it, and then you're not sitting there for 10 seconds wondering why I'm just staring at the screen, not saying anything, right? And so now it still shows me as offline. I can see myself on the screen, it says live, and I can see everyone commenting. Yeah, YouTube is really bad. You know, I think it's working now, and I'm going to tweet this out, but for those just tuning in, I decided to do this stream just at the last minute because nothing really else to do but talk about some of what's happening right now. There's a lot of stuff going on Twitter that I figured out I could talk about, so if you have not already, subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos every single day at 4 p.m., and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Timcast, and you can support the work that I do by going to timcast.com/donate and donating whatever you'd like through PayPal, but also Bitcoin, and yeah. So I wanted to start doing this live stream because there's a couple issues that I'm sitting here and I wanted to write or talk about them, and I wrote something up on Facebook earlier. The one thing, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's this photo going around of Allied forces storming the beach of Normandy on D-Day, and the joke is being made that violent, alt-left thugs are attacking a peaceful white nationalist gathering, as though the American military is somehow the same as communist, anarcho-communist, black masked wearing individuals who bash people over the head with bike locks and throw explosives into crowds. Right, so, I find it kind of funny that for one thing, whether or not you want to demonize this alt-left or whatever it is, I'm pretty sure the anarchists, Antifa, would consider the U.S. military fascist, would consider them not a good thing. And that's why I find it particularly funny to see these people in the media are so dramatically out of touch with what's going on that they're making jokes about the alt-left being like some normal group of rational liberals who are out there to challenge racism, when certainly those people exist. But what we're actually looking at is fringe lefty authoritarians like these. The people who are aligned with Antifa in many ways, obviously not in a lot of ways, but in many ways, they agree to a certain degree with fascism. And obviously I try to preface that with there are a lot of people who are anarchists who do not believe in borders or nationalism, but it's kind of like a globalist fascism where they believe their ideology is supreme and they have a right to go into the streets and beat people. And so it's certainly not the opposite of fascism. They call it anti-fascism. Well, we don't have to say they're fascist because that implies authoritarian nationalism. But they are some kind of authoritarian to the point where they'll go out and just finger point people and bash them over the head. So I got a super chat here. Actually, and you know what I should say too? The super chat is here and available if you want to send some money my way to help me do the work that I do. And anything any gift of $5 or more will put your comment up in front of everybody. It makes it a lot easier for me to see it. It's bright and colorful. And so Sam Core said, do you think civic nationalism is an alternative to the destructive identity politics on both sides of the political spectrum? I mean, I wouldn't say that civic nationalism is an alternative, but I think one of the ideas of civic nationalism, that we are all Americans first, certainly is a better message than the color of your skin is what defines you. And both factions do this, right? The alt-right, the white nationalists, they say things like, I'm tired of being shamed for being white or whatever. And then, that's the identity they latch onto, that white people are under attack or something like that. But the social justice groups, the progressives, use the exact same thing for minorities, for the LGBT community, and other things. It's always about their identity. And while I don't entirely disagree with all of identity politics, certainly, racism is an issue. I mean, come on. History tells us a lot about racism and homophobia and gay marriage, gay rights. But when these factions group up specifically to serve the purpose of a special interest based on the color of their skin or their identity or whatever, then we start seeing this de-evolution, I suppose, where the only thing that matters is this one core issue about their identity, instead of the fact that we're all humans. So it would be preferable if the politics we used were human politics. And we're like, well, we're all people and we all want to eat food and drink water, so how can we best do that? But, people are people. Let's pop over to another super chat, the Red Queen. I spent today trying to warn people about the dangers of Antifa, and I spent today being told I was an alt-right Nazi in response. Yes, which tends to be the case. It seems like no matter what you do, you're the bad guy. If you stand up to the violence on both sides, you're a cuck or you're a Nazi. Now, I'll admit, I actually have this concept that I should say. Here's what I'm going to do first. I'm gonna tweet out this link just so that people know that it's streaming. Talking about the alt-left. That's what we're doing. I have a thing that I call Raven Shad. Thank you for the super chat. Bold like a leopard wants me to view their Venezuela video. I have a thing that I call, I don't know what I should call it, the political wager, right? If you're not familiar with Pascal's wager, this was this idea that if you believe in God and God is real, you go to heaven. It's great. If you believe in God but God is not real, nothing happens, so who cares? But if you don't believe in God and he does exist, you go to hell. And if you don't believe in God and he doesn't exist, nothing matters. Therefore, the correct choice, the safest choice, is just to have faith, to believe in God. There's a lot of things wrong with this wager. The idea of polytheism, there's more than one God. But this is it's a well-known concept that a lot of people cite in why they have faith. And so I have something that I like to call the political wager. As it stands right now, with the two factions, right, the far left and the far right, if you are a liberal, if you are a progressive, I should say, then the far left will say, okay, you're fine. Even if you say horrifying things, right? I did a live stream a couple weeks ago with a man who made jokes about pedophilia. That was part of his shtick for his podcast. But as a progressive, he doesn't receive the brunt of attacks. No one's calling his employer. No one's trying to get his show shut down. He's making thousands of dollars per week, tens of thousands of dollars even. And it's because he's aligned with the left. So if you align with the left, you're okay. But if you're a liberal, the conservatives will insult you. Depending on how far left you are, you may get death threats, you may get insulted, you may get stalked, and pretty bad things. But for the most part, when it comes to these protests, when it comes to the street battles, as long as you stay away from the melee, you probably won't be attacked. But then the inverse to that is if you're conservative, you are a Nazi. So if you're a conservative, and the liberals will look at you as a Nazi, as the most extreme and violent person, and the conservatives will think you're okay. Ultimately, the way I say this is the reason I say this is like the political wager is that personally, based on my experience, and this is just my opinion, because I know certainly a lot of people have received threats from the right. I have received more death threats from the left, more physical attacks from the left than I have ever from people on the right. And so that's why I'm like, if you're liberal, you probably won't be attacked on the street. If you're conservative, you will. So ultimately, if you don't want to have anything to do with any of this, just say you're liberal, and you probably will not be attacked. I got a super chat here. Omar Dunn says, communists and National Socialist fascists are ideological siblings. The reason they hate each other is that they're competing for the same political real estate. Yes, I agree with that. And to clarify, it's this idea that the alt-right and the alt-left, yes, I call them the alt-left, it's all about identity politics. So naturally, they're using the same ideology of this victimhood of the oppression of, we're being attacked, our monuments are being destroyed, or the monuments are a representation of oppression, they attack us. And so they're competing for kind of the same space, which is what Omar said. I want to do this stream because I want to talk about what the alt-left is. Because you know what frustrates me to no end? The mainstream media, yes, I dare said it, that horrifying word. I should say more like the New York digital blog space is repeatedly going on and on and on about how there is no alt-left. And the experts have said the alt-left is a pejorative term coined by conservatives to insult anybody who's left. You know, the only outlet that I saw get it right, although the article was a bit inflammatory, was Vice, that said, no, the alt-left was coined by liberals who didn't want to be associated with the far-left progressives. And I said, thank you, because that's actually right. Now, the article was like a hit piece on liberals who didn't want to be associated with the far-left, but I made a video back in April where I talked about the term alt-left and why I use the phrase alt-left. Now, Richard Spencer, you know, he really solidified the term alt-right. And alt-right is seen as an ideology of white nationalism. And there is an overlap with a lot of actual neo-Nazis. Yes, it's true. For all the white nationalists out there who deny it, and they do. But, you know, you're yelling things like Hail Victory. Yes, that's neo-Nazi stuff, right? So, now, the alt-right, these people aren't showing up to liberal events. They aren't showing up to progressive rallies and starting fights. It's the other way around. This doesn't mean they're good people. It doesn't mean they have good arguments. But by all means, go into your little corner and say your nonsense and leave us the hell out of it. Unfortunately, the alt-left is showing up to these events and confronting them. And these street battles are happening between two groups, two fringe groups that are both violent and want, to an extent, destabilization and destruction. Certainly, people on each side would say, no, that's not the case. Now, if you go somewhere like, go to some of these anarchist forums, right? I don't want to name any of them specifically because I don't want to cause a brigade. Brigading is when a ton of people flood into a site and start attacking them, so I'm not going to call them out specifically. But they flat out say they're extremists. They flat out say they want revolution, and this is a means to do it. A lot of these people on the alt-left, they are communists. They believe in command economies. That means they believe that the economy should be planned. They don't like capitalism. They chant anticapitalista, which is anti-capitalist, when they go on these marches. More commonly, they've been chanting antifascista, anti-fascist. But a lot of these people, they do want something akin to fascism, something similarly close, right? You know, the opposite of fascism would be libertarianism. No centralized authority figure, cooperative deal-making, no violence or coercive uses of force to make someone do what you want them to do. Whereas with the alt-left, these violent... The reason I say alt-left is because they're socialists, they're anarchists, they're communists. They're not always... It's not one group. I can't say the communists. I can't say Antifa. The alt-left includes just anyone who's aligned with the left, who's extreme and believes in some kind of racial identity politics. But they want to use physical force against people who don't agree with them. And what ends up happening is what we're seeing now with this Charlottesville rally. The people in Charlottesville were torch-wielding white nationalists mixed in with many Nazis. And what I try explaining to some people about this is, you know, I do give the distinction between a white nationalist and a Nazi, but the reality is, if you're showing up to an event with a bunch of people who are chanting things like "fuck you faggots," "blood and soil," saying things like they're actually yelling the Nazi slogans, which I don't want to say. They're saying things like the 14 words, and then claiming they're not Nazis. I'm like, sorry, man. You know, look, you can say whatever the hell you want, but if you're standing next to somebody who's screaming Nazi slogans and giving the Nazi salute, what do you expect anyone else to think, right? You're at least to a certain degree aligned or allied with these people. So that being said, the mainstream Trump supporters were not at this rally. They didn't go. We didn't see Cassandra Fairbanks or Gavin McInnes. We didn't see Base Stickman. We didn't see Lauren Southern. We didn't see any of these mainstream people. It was a lot of people that were strictly white nationalists. The alt-left and these out-of-touch New York blogosphere people are convinced that this rally in Charlottesville was like any other free speech rally that's taken place. When I went to Berkeley, yes, there were some white nationalists there, but very few. For the most part, they were run-of-the-mill old conservatives, Trump supporters, and there were some liberals even. They're trying to equate that rally with what's going on in Charlottesville, which is dramatically different. The people in Charlottesville are not conservative, they're national socialists. To a certain extent, obviously not all of them. Got a super chat here from Observer 101. In Australia, the government-funded broadcaster ABC is reporting everything negative about the right and alt-right, but won't mention Antifa not once. Madeline Alicia says, what's your stance on the removal of historical statues from the Charlottesville rally? Also, thanks for being sane. I'll hop over to that in a second. Julian Gindy says, I'm very concerned about the left's assault on free speech. Shuts down the dialogue entirely. Thanks for fighting through that. So the removal of historical statues is complicated. I mean, to a certain degree, I think it's absolutely fair that we criticize Christopher Columbus. I don't even know why we think that guy's great. He certainly didn't discover America. He discovered the Bahamas. Leif Erikson, the Vikings, were here first. But not only that, like, Native Americans were here too. So, like, there's no real discovering a place when a group of people already live there. That I understand. And Christopher Columbus was my God. You read about this guy and you're like, geez, this guy was nasty. Cut off people's hands for disobeying him. Like, there's stuff I don't even want to talk about with that guy. So I have no problem being like, yeah, you know, maybe we shouldn't use that guy as a symbol. And as far as it goes with the Confederate stuff too, I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe these guys shouldn't necessarily be symbols. That being said, I don't think showing up on your own with a mob of people and throwing a trailer hitch or whatever and tearing down a statue is the appropriate response, because that fans the flames of hatred and only emboldens the people who hold the views that are in opposition to you. If you want people to say, you know what, you're right, you know, these symbols, these things, I'm kind of not okay with them. We need to progress beyond this stuff. Well, you do this through time and through connecting with people and talking with them and being friends with them. But what's happening now is as they show up and physically attack these monuments, it puts the other group of people, namely many of these white nationalists and other conservatives, on the defense, saying, whoa, 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 man. Like, I grew up with this. It was a symbol of pride and history. And in fact, the one argument that I do agree with comes from a man who said that you don't destroy history because then you'll forget it. And the defense of the monuments was that we need to look at these, we need to be upset with them and say, look at that, I don't like that, but remember why it's there, because it'll always remind you of the horrifying past, the things that we've pulled through and have overcome. So, look, the reality is, if it comes down to it, democracy. I think if the city wants to have a vote and the vote is to pull it down, there you go, right? Times change, and sometimes people want to change the way life is or what we focus on. And if the will of the people is the will of the people, then it's the best we can do, I suppose. I'm going to pop over to these super chats here. Someone said, hi, Tim. Thank you, Nefarious. So let me tell you a story. Everyone, gather around. Gather around by the fire while I tell you a great story of my youth growing up as a punk rock skateboarder. When I first started skateboarding, the older guys wore big baggy pants and big baggy shirts. You know, it was kind of like 90s hip-hop. You know, they had these little tiny skateboards with little tiny wheels. When I started skateboarding, a new style started to emerge. And it was punk rock. It was, they call it hesh, skin-tight jeans, skin-tight shirts, bigger wheels, bigger boards. And that was cool to all of us who were 14 and 15. When I started skating, these older guys would look at my pants and they'd start laughing and they'd insult me and say, why are you wearing those tight, those stretch jeans, man? You look like a queer, man. Like, what's up with that? And I'd be like, it's cool, man. Like, you guys are old, whatever. So when I got older, by the time I was about 20, I'm still wearing my, my skin-tight punk rock jeans and my like wearing all black, beanie, of course. And some kids are skating now, but they're wearing what's called chinos. These are pants that are made of like a thin fabric, kind of like dress pants. And they don't go all the way down to your shoe, so you can see the ankle, like, flooding. And all of a sudden, all the kids around me who are my age start laughing and saying, oh, like, what are you guys doing, man? You look like idiots, man. Like, your pants are too short. And I'm sitting there like, dude, are you guys serious? Like, don't you remember 5 years ago when the older guys wearing baggy pants made fun of us? And my friends are like, yeah, but that looks stupid. I'm like, what do you think the older guys thought about us? Like, dude, things change, man. You know what I say to them? Hey, good for you, dude. You found a style that you like. Your friends think it's cool. You like it. That's how style changes. Do you want to be a stodgy old man who's complaining all the time and you pull your belt all up to your armpits? Or you just want to be like, yeah, you know what? The kids found something they like and that's what they do, and they redefined culture. And that happens. one of the big challenges that we're seeing is not the change in ideas. Like what concerns me is not so much the removal of statues or the anger over symbols of the past. What concerns me is the dogmatic ideology and the shutting down of free speech. By all means, take down the statues if that's what the democracy has dictated. If there's a vote comes to it, and the city council says we've agreed that these symbols should be taken down, then by all means. But have a real discussion about it. Put something else in its stead to remind people of what was once there and why, and have a real conversation about why we want to make these changes. Don't just call everyone else Nazis and then show up on your own and just tear them down. And if we look at what happened in Baltimore, overnight they went and removed all these monuments, and I think that was fear. That was a reaction to the fear and the rhetoric and what we saw in Charlottesville. They removed it, and as far as I know, I could be wrong, right? I'm not always right, but my understanding is that they went in the middle of the night without telling anybody and just pulled these statues down. And if that's the case, the community needs to have a say in what is going on. And one of the concerns I have with a lot of these statues, especially with Charlottesville, is that the people who showed up there, the Unite the Right rally, these people aren't from Charlottesville. They want to defend a statue for a place they don't live in a community they have nothing to do with. And many of the protesters who showed up to counter-protest the white nationalists aren't from there either. So it's baffling to see two groups coming to an area where they have no idea what's going on in the community and make assertions about what that community should do. That's what scares me as well. So we got a super chat. Oh, nope, it's an old super chat. So if you guys have any other questions, what I want to get back over to this concept of the alt-left, because after the Berkeley stuff, I made this video talking about what the alt-left is and why. And I did not coin the term alt-left. It's been around for a while. I made a video about it. And what I said was, listen, I'm a liberal. I'm a left-leaning dude. How do I define myself without being in the same bracket as the people who want to shut down the First Amendment, as the people who want to throw bricks and get violent, as the people who have assassinated police? A lot of people on the right say liberalism is like a mental illness or something, and I'm like, okay, no, I understand what they're trying to say, but they're putting a blanket over everybody who's on the left, everybody who's liberal. So how do I identify myself without being a part of these crazy violent extremists? And so I said that group needs to be identified as something else. You know why? The mainstream left, the average liberal, likes the First Amendment. In the video, I talked about how on CNN, this was around when Ann Coulter had her event canceled. They had a conservative and a liberal on the air. And I can't remember who the host was, but they said to the conservative, what do you think about Ann Coulter having her event canceled? And the conservative said, it is appalling. We have a First Amendment right in this country. And then the host moved over to the liberal and said, but what do you think? And the liberal flat out was like, I agree. Even Bernie Sanders said Ann Coulter has a right to speak. Recently, Glenn Greenwald said that the ACLU was in the right. I may be misinterpreting this, but he wrote an article about people are attacking the ACLU for defending the right to free speech for this group, Unite the Right, for the alt-right. And now they're attacking Glenn Greenwald. And this is what's baffling. If you're going to say that liberals are the problem, well, hold on there. Because Glenn Greenwald is a liberal fella. He is a gay journalist. I don't know if he's married, but he's certainly on the left, and he's taken a ton of hard left positions. And he thinks that people have a right to free speech, and the ACLU has a right to defend their First Amendment rights, and they're attacking him. So how do we define people like me, like Sam? I think Sam Harris is a liberal. I'm not entirely sure, but Dave Rubin. There's a handful of other people. There's what they call themselves. They call the shitlords on YouTube. These people who are liberal but are critical of Antifa and these far left extremists. What do we call ourselves? So I have people often ask me, what are you? And I'm like, liberal. I'm not alt left though. Okay. So when Trump said, "What about the alt left?" First, let me address this. I don't think Trump realized that this group in Charlottesville was not regular conservatives. In fact, I don't think most of those people were conservative at all, right? Of the people who are National Socialists, I don't know what percentage of the group were actual neo-Nazis. I know there was Hitler quotes and there was a Nazi flag. I don't know what percentage of them were actual Nazis, but they're socialists. There's a mix of libertarians. But you had people chanting, certain slogans, and the mainstream Trump supporters were not there. So I don't think Trump realized that when he tried saying, two sides to this, because, even like Cernovich and Paul Joseph Watson and other high-profile individuals are like, no, to hell with these people. They're, I think Paul Joseph Watson called the alt-right right-wing SJWs. But when he says the alt-left, now you get all of these New York-based, yes, and they're all New York-based, like progressive blogosphere people saying that there is no alt-left. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. We've been using the phrase alt-left for a while now. I first started using it officially, as I said, to sort of separate rational, normal liberals from the far-left group that wants to shut down free speech and bludgeon people over the head, right? We need a way to do that. But I didn't come up with it. It's been used for a while. And now all of a sudden, because they didn't do the research, they've never heard the word, they assume it was made up. Oh, it was just made up by conservatives to insult the left. No, it wasn't. You can go on Wikipedia and I don't know about Wikipedia. You can go on Wiktionary and other websites and actually look at the history. Originally, people were trying to use alt-left to represent rational liberals who didn't identify with the mainstream, dogmatic group. It's sort of changed over time to be the inverse. The alt-left is the far fringe left, the alt-right is the far fringe right, and the definition changed, but it's been around for a long time. So we got a super chat here. Do you think Antifa is a proxy army created by George Soros? No, I think saying George Soros is responsible for all this is overly simplistic. I think to a certain degree, George Soros, he certainly does fund nonprofits and other activist groups that then does lead to a lot of protesting. There were some groups in New York during Occupy Wall Street that they weren't being paid to protest or anything like that, but they worked for nonprofits that were very active in Occupy Wall Street. So I think, when you see someone say, George Soros is funding these protesters, it's like, no, come on, that's a bit hyperbolic. Because then what happens is these protesters make jokes about, where do I get my Soros check from, haha. And it's like, well, you're not going to get a check from George Soros. You can get a check from a nonprofit, which is funded through grants by a foundation, which George Soros is a contributor to, right? And I think people are stretching out, George Soros and his role in a lot of things. And there's a lot of fake quotes about him going around. I saw one where he's claiming he wants to create a racial divide in this country, and I couldn't find any proof that was true. Got another super chat here from Madrox145. I am done being open to the alt-right. They have proven to be awful. However, won't the media ignoring Antifa embolden them to widespread violence? Yeah, I believe so. It's absolutely insane, the level of ignorance amongst the mainstream journalists. They just don't do any research. My God, I don't think they're stupid. Hanlon's razor, I love quoting this. Never attribute to malice that which is easily explained by incompetence. These people who are saying the alt-left was made up didn't even do a Google search of the damn word. If you go on YouTube and type in alt-left, my video was like the third video where I literally break down what the word means, why I use it. And there's other websites that have used it as well. It's even in Urban Dictionary and it's been there for a long time. These people couldn't do that. They couldn't just Google search the damn phrase. They heard something they never heard before and said, that's fake. My God. It's certainly not as widespread as the phrase alt-right, but that's because the media repeatedly gives the alt-right recognition. They believe anyone who's a Trump supporter is alt-right. They believe anyone who doesn't adhere to the dogmatic ideology of the far left is alt-right. They call Dave Rubin alt-right. They call me alt-right. Al Jazeera calls me a white supremacist. Jesus. Let's pop over to the chat and see what you guys... Someone says liberals aren't stupid. They just know so much that just isn't so. Here's a good one. Texas Cat said, Tim thinks journalists are dumb instead of realizing they're all paid Democrat trolls. I made a video for Sargon of Akkad's channel where I explained fake news, and there's a bunch of different aspects of fake news and how it comes to be. One of the important things to realize is that news organizations hire people who are like them. Someone wants to hire, you got an editor-in-chief, and he says, I'm going to hire a writer. Well, this person lives in New York. People in New York tend to be far left because they're surrounded by people who are far left, and they're in cities, so they see things that work for their point of view. Then they meet somebody who is like them and shares their same beliefs, and they say, this is a good person, I'm going to hire them. These people then write things that are far left, And because they're in a bubble, in these newsrooms in New York City, they're in a bubble where they only talk to each other. They've never heard the phrase alt-left because they don't leave the office. They show up, they go on the computer, they go to the same damn websites, they go on Reddit, and they just type things. And then they take someone else's story and they rewrite it. So of course they never heard of the alt-left. Have any of these writers ever actually gone down to any of these Trump rallies and actually met people and tried to learn what they were actually about? 99%? Hell no. Let's jump over to the super chat here. Nefarious NYC says, New York newspapers have attacked the president's choice of words when he said very fine people. Very fine people showed up to support the Unite the Right rally. Do you think he misspoke? I don't think Trump realized. I don't think he was paying attention to this event. Because the Trump supporters like Cernovich, like Cassandra Fairbanks, like Lauren Southern, they did not show up to this event. In Washington, D.C., there was a planned event, a free speech event, and when it was announced that Richard Spencer would speak, it split in two because the Trump supporters didn't want to have anything to do with Richard Spencer and white nationalism. And there were then two events. And then the Unite the Right rally was white nationalists, and again, the mainstream Trump-supporting faction did not show up. And in fact, Cernovich has repeatedly denounced these people, and so has Paul Joseph Watson. So I don't think Trump realized. I think Trump might have been thinking this was like a normal Trump event, and they were just calling them Nazis. And this is what happened when you call all Trump supporters Nazis. Well, how the hell are you supposed to pick out the actual Nazis if literally everyone's a Nazi? Then you have an event that actually is a lot of white nationalists and Nazis, and everyone just assumed it's run-of-the-mill Trump supporters. This is the problem with this insane dogmatic rhetoric. It's popular. Got another super chat. Theodore McCarthy, liberal, has been associated with oppressive anti-white and anti-Christian politics since the 1980s. Look, the fight between liberals and conservatives has been going on for a long time, but politics used to be about liberal or conservative, not white or black, not Latino or white, not straight or gay. Now it's all identity politics, and there's so many different factions, and they're getting violent. BW85, how about the alt-right and the control left? Look, the term alt means alternative, and a lot of people want to use control because it's in a sense derogatory. It insults the left, saying that they're all about control. The reason I say alt-right and alt-left is because it's not meant to be derogatory. It's meant to be alternative. And the mainstream liberals, the actual liberals in this country, they're normal people. They don't, they want freedom of speech. They want our rights. And the people who are on the far, far left are alternative to that. So we got another super chat here, Hex Censorship. There is a movement in Texas to relocate statues from places that don't want them to our state. Everyone wins then, history is preserved, and triggers halted. Sure. Omar Dunn says, telling to see a lot on the right disavow the alt-right as soon as it becomes clear that what they actually stand for. The left won't even acknowledge the existence of their own loonies, let alone actions. Absolutely. When it was around the deplorable, Baked Alaska had tweeted out some anti-Semitic jokes. And he thought it was funny, he was being ironic. But it offended a lot of people, and it crossed the line because, dude, like, seriously, most people are not okay with racism and anti-Semitism on the left and the right. And so Cernovich and other people were like, dude, Baked, that's not cool, and we don't want you coming to this event. So they went off and tried to do something else. I talked to Baked Alaska, and he said it was stupid, and he shouldn't have done that, and, I just thought it was funny, it was a joke. And sure enough, now you see Baked Alaska in Charlottesville with these people carrying torches, and he's yelling Nazi chants. So whether or not it was a joke or not, this dude has certainly, I don't want to tell you, man. He wants to say that he's not a Nazi, he hates the KKK, he hates white supremacists, but he's going to go down and chant Nazi slogans. Like, the Trump supporters disavowed this behavior a long time ago. Mike Cernovich has got a mixed-race kid. Based Stickman has got a mixed-race kid. These people are not Nazis or white supremacists, right? But the media is not going to bring that up. And again, Al Jazeera called me, my God, look, I'm going to say it and you're all going to laugh, but Al Jazeera called me a white supremacist, and I'm fucking mixed. Like, how does this make sense? I apologize for swearing. People got mad at me for swearing last time. Kendall Wolf, what do you think about the removal of Confederate statues by city governments and lefties? This seems a very bad move from my perspective. I did just talk about this a little bit. Honestly, I'm all about democracy and open dialogue. If people calmly have a debate and one side loses that debate, end of story. It's how democracy works. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But as long as we can all come to an understanding that the majority has dictated something, I understand democracy isn't perfect, and that's why we have a democratic republic. But I think the way these removals should take place is that there should be a meeting where people discuss it, and if the community decides to remove it, that's the case. And to reiterate for the people who just came in, what we saw in Charlottesville was a bunch of people on both sides who did not live in Charlottesville. I'm sure some of the people did. I'm sure there were a lot of locals there. But so many of the attendees were not from there, coming down and trying to dictate what this community should do. And I'm just like, man, I bet a ton of these businesses were like, just get the hell out. We don't want any of you here. Another super chat here. Message retracted. Oh, interesting. But thank you for the super chat. I have no idea who it came from. Someone says, stop conflating white nationalists and Nazis. That's so disingenuous. Let's talk about the difference between white nationalists and Nazis. Nazis, literally, it's a pejorative term for the National Socialists that were in Germany. And these people believed in ethnic cleansing, and they committed one of the most evil atrocities in human history, the Holocaust. They had certain phrases that they would use. They believed in certain ideas. And while white nationalists and Nazis are not identical, there is, at least unfortunately to many white nationalists, an overlap between the two groups. Now, I know someone's saying that's disingenuous, but listen, there were people in Charlottesville who actually had Nazi flags. There are people who actually had Hitler quotes on their shirts, as we've seen in some of these photos. And there were many, many, many people giving the Roman salute. That's the salute the Nazis would do. And many, many of these people who claim they aren't Nazis are saying Nazi slogans that I'm not going to repeat, that I'm not going to say live. So these people say, look, but we're not socialists. Sure, that's fine. If they want to reject the term Nazi because they're not socialists, you have to understand the colloquial use of the phrase Nazi is in reference to white identity politics and also the terminology used by Nazis. If you're going to chant with people blood and soil and the 14 words, I'm sorry, but people are going to call you a neo-Nazi, right? Now, there is a difference between white nationalists because there are some white nationalists who don't like racism, but they're still a part of white identity politics. And this is what I tried explaining in the last video I did. The left is standing on the other side of a football field, right? And when they look down at the other end of that football field, they see white nationalists in front, and they see a small group of Nazis carrying Nazi flags and other paraphernalia. Do you think they're going to notice the guy in his business suit and think, that's a normal guy? Or are they going to see the flag and say, those are all Nazis? And that's what happens. The same should be true for the left. But to the left's, I don't know how to describe it, power or ignorance, the mainstream left will not call out the violent extremism. I'm not seeing, the bike lock basher. How many articles were written about that when it happened? 7 people bashed over the head with a bike lock. Are they following that story? They don't. And then when Trump says the alt-left, they act like it doesn't exist. Are you kidding me? This guy was on his knees with his hands in the air. And a dude walked up out of nowhere and bashed him over the head. My God, these people are insane. Cassandra Fairbanks retweeted this list from somebody else of all of the crazy left-wing identitarian attacks. I tried explaining this on my Facebook. I lived on Myrtle, just off the corner of Myrtle and Tompkins, right by Myrtle and Marcy. Okay, this is where 2 cops were assassinated by a black supremacist. This happened in front of my house. I walk to my window and I look outside. The lights are shut off in the street. There's cops everywhere. They won't let me go outside. They said, you can't go outside. We're locked down. Someone just killed some cops. So I had to wait for these cops to leave and sneak over into these projects to try and see what was happening. And you know what happened when I got to that street corner? When I saw this police tape and this blood, this crime scene, journalists everywhere, a car pulled up and a guy started screaming and cheering, saying yes, talking about killing pigs. And I see that stuff and I'm like, my God, man. Look, I don't care how angry you are. Killing 2 random people is not fighting oppression. It is killing random people. And all it does is make your cause weaker. It gives strength to your opponent. And it takes the lives of 2 guys who had nothing to do with your strife at all. And it puts undue pain and suffering on other people. And when I try and explain this to other people, they say, oh, well, but there's so much oppression and white people are bad. If white people are so bad, he killed, it was like a Latino guy and an Asian dude. What the hell does that have to do with white people? He just killed 2 people, man. And this guy on my Facebook is defending this guy. The guy in Texas, he was believed not to have been directly affiliated with any of these groups, but he said he wanted to kill white people, and he had liked several pages about black nationalism. So a lot of people infer that he was a black nationalist. And what did he do? He took a rifle and he shot up several cops, locked the city down. It was a nightmare. And this guy is defending that behavior. Why the hell would you defend anybody who wants to go and kill other people? I got some super chats to take care of over here. J Prepo1 says Antifa is potentially more dangerous than the Nazis KKK. Everyone denounces Nazis. Antifa gets a pass. It's not actively promoted by media. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say more or less dangerous. But what I would say is, there's a reason for that. And that's because, like, Nazis are seriously the bad guys. They had skull and crossbones symbols, right? You ever see that skit, Are We the Baddies? Where they're like, the Totenkampf was the skull and crossbones they would wear. Antifa does a whole lot of really bad things, but it is much more loosely organized. The problem is these journalists don't know anything about it or don't care, or in many cases agree with it, which is really scary. Top over Observer 101 Super Chat says, I've seen people claiming some Antifa dress up as Nazis and white nationalists to damage the reputation of the right at rallies. Any truth to that? The only instance I know about that was, you can Google search this, there's a photo of a man in all black like Antifa, and he's holding a shield. It's wrapped in garbage bags. There's a tear in the garbage bags, and you can see what looks like some black squiggly lines. Later, there's another photo of a man who's giving the Nazi salute, and he's got another similarly shaped shield with the black sun on it. And that's a symbol of, I believe it's a white nationalist symbol, I'm not entirely sure, but it is considered associated with far-right groups, but it looks entirely like the same exact shield. So a lot of people believe, on the left, that it was a white nationalist trying to paint Antifa in a bad light, and people on the right believe it was Antifa pretending to be a white nationalist giving the Nazi salute. But you know what I will say is none of that matters, because in Charlottesville, these people were giving the Nazi salute, and they were yelling Nazi slogans and things like the 14 words. So it doesn't matter if, you don't need Antifa to show up and pretend to do this when people are already doing it all the time. Tiger Woman says, I understood him to be saying both sides were violent. He also allowed for the few who may have been innocent bystanders. Yeah, I understand that Trump, I imagine he doesn't want to escalate the problems, and if he condemns the right or condemns the left, he can only potentially make things worse. But this was not that case. I'm sorry. But Charlottesville was a bunch of white nationalists and neo-Nazis surrounding a Confederate statue with torches, yelling Nazi slogans. People were giving the Nazi salute. Street fights broke out. It doesn't matter whose fault it was. It doesn't matter who had a permit, who didn't. None of that matters. It's about optics. It's about what people see, what people understand, what people believe. And when you see a large group of people all wearing the same thing, carrying torches and yelling Nazi slogans, as far as anyone concerned, that makes them neo-Nazis. While they can say personally they don't believe in these politics, this is what I tell them. How many grains of sand make a heap, right? If you're going to say that you don't believe what the Nazis believe, but you're going to go chanting and carrying torches and doing what they did, I'm sorry, man, but don't be surprised if now everyone thinks you are a Nazi. Right? There's literally no reason to be doing that if that wasn't the case. And no one's going to believe you because actions speak louder than words. I think I missed another super chat here. Maybe I can scroll up. Yeah, here we go. Can you recommend Cogent Lich? Can you recommend any true journalists such as yourself to follow? I lost all trust in the MSM a long time ago. You know who I really like? I've known for a long time. Rosie Gray. She was at The Atlantic, and I feel like she does a really good job. She wrote something about Richard Spencer and Charlottesville, and it was just like straight up, no offense, straight up boring journalism. When I say boring, I mean that as a compliment. Journalism isn't supposed to be an entertaining piece that incites emotion. It's supposed to be a straightforward, factual piece to help you understand what's going on. But over time, people have learned that getting you angry will get you to share and get you to watch and comment and engage. CGP Grey did a video about this. I talked about this, in my last stream, called "This Video Will Make You Angry," and that's exactly what the video is about. He doesn't talk about any particular groups. He just says that anger is most likely to get you to share. And the crazy thing is, the left and the right aren't fighting each other. They're complementing each other like butterflies and flowers. It's a pollination process. Because these two groups aren't arguing with each other, they're talking amongst themselves about how much they hate the other. Then they show up to a rally and beat each other with sticks, or worse. Lucas, Super Chat, why are the right and libertarians incapable of making social media platforms that stick? Where are the investors that stand behind their principles to make proper competitors? This is why I like Minds.com, right? Minds.com. I just did a video with one of the co-founders the other day, and it published today. You can't have a successful platform that is only one political ideology. It's just a bubble echo chamber. And when all these social platforms ban people who are far right or whatever, and they go and form Hatreon or Gab or these other platforms that are literally just conservative echo chambers, it's not going to attract mainstream conversation. Why would a celebrity like Brad Pitt want to use Gab? Well, he wouldn't. And so he won't. But would someone like Brad Pitt want to use a platform like Minds? Maybe. I wouldn't say right now, but Minds has far lefties on it, like Abby Martin and Lee Camp. You know, Lee Camp is one of the smart ones. He's a comedian. He's far left. He's anti-establishment, but he's very critical of Trump, and he's very left-leaning. But you've also got Trump supporters on Minds as well. They've done a really good job of making sure they aren't just a pigeonholed social platform that caters to one ideology. The reason why I'll still use Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube for all these things is that it's where the majority of people spend their time. And we don't need social media platforms, crowdfunding platforms catering to one political ideology. That just makes the problem worse. What we need is a platform that respects freedom of thought and the right to share ideas. That's why we need platforms that say, screw you to the advertisers. You want to pull out and take our money away? We'll find money somewhere else. Apparently someone else is streaming on this topic. So, for those that are just tuning in, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Timcast. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. I do videos every day at 4 p.m. Likely tomorrow. I wrote this thing on Facebook I'm going to talk about in the morning, and it's just, I'll tell you all right now the gist of it. Or I will in a second. Let me hit the super chat real quick. Shifty Chant said, Tim, I appreciate your efforts and content. You make the world a better place. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. If you want to help support my work, you can hop in the super chat. Any donation, $5 or more, your comment will appear, and I can read that. I try to read other comments, but it scrolls really quickly. And you can also go to timcast.com/donate, and you can subscribe for a monthly gift through PayPal. I take Bitcoin, and I've actually got a P.O. box where you can send whatever the hell you want. But tomorrow, here's what I want to talk about tomorrow. And I hate being an alarmist because, you know, one of the things that always ticked me off about Alex Jones is how he would scream at people to buy gold. Buy your gold, people. Oh, they're coming for your income tax. And I'd be like, dude, you're trying to convince people that the government's trying to scare you into, you know, giving up your money and security, and then you're sitting here scaring people into buying gold and buying your product. But you know what I realized? Let me tell you a story. Once again, another story time with him. Everyone gather around. I was driving my car once, and this was about 12 years ago, and I see about 20 feet behind me is a squad car. It's a cop. And I'm thinking, is this cop following me? He's going to pull me over? I don't want to be paranoid, right? You know what? It's probably nothing. He's probably not going to pull me over. Why would he pull me over anyway? I didn't do anything wrong. Sure enough, he pulls around, goes in front of me, and then drives really fast. I go up a hill, and I see him in the left turn lane, and I went, I was wrong. Of course he wasn't going to pull me over. I'm not doing anything. I'm not speeding or anything. As soon as I passed him, he pulls out of the left turn lane, pulls me over. And I was like, God damn it. I was right. He was going to pull me over. And so I started, you know, this was when I was like 18, and I was like, maybe I should trust my intuition a little bit more and not doubt myself. So I started thinking about, I've been reading a little bit. I just read a little bit about Weimar Germany and the communists and Nazis who fought in the streets and how this led, in part, to a lot of the rise of Germany. There's politics and hyperinflation were a much larger portion of what caused the turmoil. But looking at what's going on now, a year and a half ago, I said, this is only going to get worse. A year ago, I said, this is going to get worse. Half a year ago, it's going to get worse. And a couple weeks ago, I said, people, it's going to get worse. And it did. And it keeps getting worse. And I got to the point where I said, you know, I feel like I'm standing in a building with a bunch of people. And we start to see smoke, right? And what happens in these situations, that everyone looks around. Well, should I run? No one else is running. What should I do? And everyone just stands there and then burns to death. And so I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe we really are past the tipping point, and this is it. Freedom of speech has been crushed since the Charlottesville rally. That car slamming into those people has done more damage for freedom of speech than anything these far left, alt left could have done. Now we're seeing powerful media organizations associating the alt left, these far left violent communists and anarchists, with American soldiers who fought against fascism. It's crazy. So I don't want to be caught with my pants down. You know, I think I want to have a plan for if things get really bad. And that's when I said, you know what, I did buy some gold, because it's always smart to have just, you know, assets, other investments. Just having your money sitting in the bank doesn't make sense. I bought some cryptocurrencies too. A lot of people say cryptocurrency is not a good idea because, you know, if the internet goes down, you're screwed. But this is more of the idea of that the U.S. goes down, which is complicated. Got a super chat here from Randy Ireland. He says, totally agree. Great job on all of this. One of the few to get all this absolutely correct. Any update on where we can support Lauren Southern? Well, if you happen to be someone who likes Lauren Southern, I'm not entirely sure what she's doing, but I know that for a while she had a site called patreonsucks.com. I guess that's what she's still doing. After she got pulled from Patreon, she launched patreonsucks.com, and that's basically it's like a page for her. So, you know, some of the things that you know should be said. Wow. Just looking at some messages here. Got a super chat real quick. Terrence Van Loo. The issue with Minds is it's mainly political user base. It's hard to attract average people to such a site. It's true. It's very political on the left and the right. But that could be a good thing. Maybe it'll never be as big as Facebook, but it's got over 1 million users at this point, I believe. So a lot of people, they keep posting things that, like, I'm friends with Weave and I'm friends with, you know, Baked Alaska and Lauren Southern and all these people. And I always say to people, like, oh, friendly, right? Like, I don't hang out with Baked Alaska, Weave, or Lauren Southern. I know them. I would say I've hung out with, if you don't know who Weave is, he's like one of the Daily Stormer guys. He is one of the most notorious internet trolls ever to exist. He's one of the, I dare say he's one of the original internet trolls. Very high profile and very, 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 very out there. One of the worst people on the internet, by all means. Got a super chat. The World War II vets equal Antifa comparison is kind of crazy, given that American army which invaded Normandy was segregated. Oh, yeah. Jared Chapman says, what kind of activism would you recommend for those who find both sides, Antifa, alt-right, distasteful? That's what I don't know, man. That's what I don't know. Right? Centrists aren't the kind of people who are going to rise up and get violent, but you know what I was thinking is, you know what? We need to stop calling them alt-left and alt-right and just call them identitarians. They're one group of people. I don't care if they fight amongst themselves and they hate each other. They're the same thing to me. They're identitarians and they're violent. But, you know, what I was saying before is Vice just did a piece where for 3 days they embedded with some of the craziest, you know, neo-Nazi people. I don't know if you saw this video, but this is a guy who's flat out blaming the Jews for everything and using racial slurs. And Vice News embedded with this crew for the duration of the protest, even after someone was killed sitting down with him. And you know what, the left, go to r/anarchism on Reddit, and they're like, really great journalism, Vice. I do one interview with Baked Alaska, and they call me a Nazi, right? When you are protected with what we call the billionaire's blanket, someone else coined that, but that's kind of the idea. It's the billionaire's blanket. If you are wrapped with money and institutional power, you're not to blame. No one's going to hold it against you. You have the freedom to go and associate with whoever you want without being labeled a Nazi. I'm going to pop over. I got a quick message. What's this all about? Something interesting here. Conspiracy. Someone has posted they believe that the KKK and neo-Nazi groups are being run by FBI agents and informants, and no one is talking about it, and there's a bunch of links. Well, someone just sent me that. I don't know what that's all about, but I'll have to come back to something like that later, because that's certainly not in my wheelhouse for the time being. I'm not a conspiracy person. I'm pretty anti-conspiracy, and I know a lot of people don't like that. But let's talk a little bit about conspiracies. We'll do a little segue and talk about one of these other groups of people. I was at a bar with a bunch of journalists, and a lot of these journalists refused to even Google search a conspiracy theory and read about it. And I'm like, why? Shouldn't you know what these people think? I don't understand this. And so what I said, listen, if someone comes to you and tells you that, the Nazis escaped to the moon and they brought a bunch of cows with them and are secretly producing moon cheese to survive, and now they're all disfigured and they're going to come back for the second coming of space Nazis, I'm going to say, yeah, okay, buddy, sure. But if someone comes to me and says that a group of special interests are coordinating amongst themselves to commit some kind of malfeasance or to trigger some kind of civil conflict, I'd say, oh, that's entirely possible. Let me Google search that and see if your facts support it. Shouldn't any good journalist take 10 seconds, a couple minutes to fact check someone's statement? It's mind-blowing. Super chat here from Rebel Riot. The media seems to want to push people into a side to create a war. I bet they were planning that even before Trump. Love your work, Tim. If the world ends soon, I'm glad some of us stayed level-headed. Thank you, Rebel Riot. I don't think it's on purpose. I just think that all of these New York, these big websites like BuzzFeed, Vox, Mashable, it's all New York. And that's the New York culture and progressive mindset that is spreading across the world for everyone to read, because these sites are massive. It's not a conspiracy. It's just New York progressives are the ones who are running this stuff. Why? Because at some point, when all of the mainstream media and local news outlets were dying, some young person created a blog where they just spewed anger all day. And they said, I'm so angry about X, Y, and Z, and this is happening. And anger gets shares. So this was politically motivated, these were politically motivated individuals, and their blogs took off and they made a ton of money. And so they said, yep, we're left-leaning, that's what we do. And then the investor said, I don't care what your politics are, you're making money. Here's more. So level-headed news doesn't get shares, and people don't share, so people don't see it, and it doesn't make money. And that's why now we're being dominated by Breitbart and by, Vox, the far left and the far right. Super chat over here. What will your future podcast entail? I'll jump back to that in a second. J. Lo says, did Unite the Right cost Trump and the right future election? I don't know, but I will say this. The Unite the Right rally did the opposite of uniting the right. It did the opposite of protecting free speech. It did the opposite of protecting these monuments. So if the real intention of these people was to get as many monuments removed and to shut down free speech, they did it. Congratulations. Game Misconduct says, hey, Tim, great conduct. Could you please speak on why it sounds like the mainstream media is in mid-orgasm when covering these violent events? Yeah, because it means money. They go out and they know that people are going to watch because people love riot porn. And what's frustrating to me is that I get all these activists saying, Tim, you love riot porn. I'm like, dude, I literally, riots and protests are like 5% of my coverage. Literally, I do videos every single day, and a lot of them are interviews. But the only thing people see is that one high-profile live stream where I covered a breaking news event, and then they act like that's all I'm trying to do, which is mind-numbingly frustrating. Which brings me to my podcast idea. I have a microphone for a podcast. I have all the equipment set up, but where I'm currently located, it is much more difficult to do for reasons of space, general logistics, and yeah. But I'm moving to a much bigger space where I'm actually going to have a real studio setup. I'm probably going to get one of those little crane arm things or whatever for some reason. Maybe not. I don't know. Half kidding. But I'll actually be able to set up a space where I can shoot my videos, I can record a podcast, which the intention is to be, 45 minutes to an hour long, where I bring in guests who do some kind of political or cultural thing and talk about it. So, mostly we're gonna talk about issues of politics, finance, conflict, crisis, etc. I was talking with one of the co-founders of Minds about the idea of censorship, and I just said, man, we could easily do an hour podcast on this. And I was actually recently talking to Sargon of Akkad about Weimar Germany and about what we're seeing on the ground. And I said, I was talking to him, and I was like, dude, can we just record this conversation, man? Like, this is great. It's fascinating. We're talking about, the rise of these violent factions, what it means for the U.S., our cryptocurrency is a safe store of value, and it was a really fascinating conversation, albeit very short. And then I'm also working on another story, so that made me realize, I was like, man, we could do really, really good conversations for an hour, and then upload it as, like a traditional podcast. And that gives me a lot more to do in terms of on the weekends. Like, look, it's Wednesday, and I normally don't do live streams, but I figure, you know what, man? Casey Neistat, you guys know him? He's got a tattoo on his arm that says, "Do more." And I said, you know what? I don't do more. I do a video every day. I go out. I try to find an interesting story where I can interview somebody. Sometimes there are things that I think are too important, and I'll just shoot a video of my opinion. So like the past 4 days are like literally me talking about Charlottesville. And tomorrow again, I'm going to talk about the wake of Charlottesville. I did a video on Bitcoin and a video on mines because I wanted to give a break, right, to just this crazy, violent, depressing discussion. But, these conversations, they need to happen. Sean Rufus, Super Chat, says, "Hey Tim, appreciate the live stream. These statues have been around for some time. Why take them down now?" Times change. Opinions change. We progress as a society. We become more understanding and accepting. Racism still exists. I certainly don't think it's as extreme as the alt-left does, but I've personally experienced it, and I think it affects people of all races, including white people, black people, Asians, Latinos. People hold prejudices. And I think we're coming now to a point where these are symbols that represent a dark history of the United States, and people think that these statues pay reverence to these figures. A lot of people like that it pays reverence. A lot of people don't like that it does. And so now you have a lot of groups showing up to forcibly remove them in anger. It is what it is. My opinion is we vote on these things. And if society wants to change, we need to let it. Because change isn't always bad. Change is good, actually. Evolution and progress helps us become stronger and better. Sometimes change is bad. You look at evolution, not all mutations allow the species to survive. Sometimes there's a mutation where like a leg pops out of the animal's head and then it dies. So not every change is good. But we have to make sure that we're okay with change when it's good, and we keep an eye out for the bad stuff. I think a lot of what we're seeing with shutting down free speech is the bad stuff. But, I digress. Got some super chats here. Ben Cooper. "With all the Confederate statues being taken down and removed, how should we teach the good and bad history in the U.S.? How is it that there is a Stalin statue in Portland and no one is freaking out over it?" There's a Lenin statue in Seattle, and Jack Posobiec, I think is how you pronounce it, was there with a bunch of people protesting. So I think it's not so much about bad statues. It's about identity politics. Let me pop over to this super chat real quick. "What are the odds of seeing you on the YouTube Saints? Unfortunately, the straw man, I don't know who they are." Madstork91, "South Korean media saying Trump supports racism, copy-pasta journalism, or do you think it's a bigger play with Thad and geopolitical?" I just think the media makes money when they rag on Trump. And that's why I'll bring it up again. CNN did the Trump got 2 scoops of ice cream story. Not news, sorry. Should not be wasting our time with that. But yes, that's what they did, and that's the state of our journalism. Because media companies want to get you riled up and angry because that gets you to share and to watch, get you to talk about it, and that's how they make money. This is why I had a meeting yesterday with some friends, and I can't announce anything yet. But as many of you know, I've been working on Subverse. Taylor Beacom, his YouTube channel is Beacom of Light. That's I believe it's Beacom of Light. Let me actually pull that up because he's doing a lot of work on this. I'll drop this over in the chat if that works for any of you. I think I can drop it in the chat. Yeah, so he's basically managing the structure for content and Subverse, and we're really, really close to being able to launch. But we've got some technological revolutions coming. And I'm meeting with some engineers and developers, and we're trying to figure out a way to build a platform that doesn't need to make money. And that's the big kicker. If you don't need to worry about ads, if you don't need to worry about pandering to a specific base, we can say whatever the hell we want and not worry about losing money. And that's important. That means if we have a journalist with an unpopular opinion, and everyone starts attacking us saying, "Oh, this person you have who's writing for you is this kind of political ideology or that kind of political ideology," I'll say, "Yeah, that sucks for you, doesn't it?" And they're going to keep writing. We're not going to shut anyone down for speech unless it's what the Supreme Court has ruled not protected, like inciting violence, threats and other things like that. There are other things you have to consider. Obviously, it's not just the Supreme Court. There's certain issues of web hosting and rules we have to adhere to, but certainly we will never cave to pressure over a conservative or liberal. So get as outraged as you want. if we can solve this problem, and basically what I'm trying to say is if we have an idea for an alternative revenue stream that would allow us to avoid direct sponsorship and advertising and say whatever we need to say without anyone shutting us down. Got a name for the podcast, Tim's Pool House. That actually is a pretty good name. I just don't think the average person who's searching iTunes or whatever will be able to find it. So maybe I was gonna call it Why We're Fucked. I apologize for swearing. I rarely ever swear, but this past week has been so nuts. And I was told by some friends who run podcasts that iTunes will not allow it. So I guess not. Oh yeah, I guess not. So let's see what we got over in the comments. If you guys got any questions? I see someone put in what looks like Chinese. Ni hao. Yes, it means hello. Well, it's been about an hour and 5 minutes, so I think we're getting close to winding down. As you can see, the time has passed. The sun has gone down. It's now much darker in my mini studio right now. You can tell, at least when the light was on, everything's kind of trashed because I'm preparing to move. But before we go, if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter at Timcast. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. One thing that really helps is giving a thumbs up to the video. I always forget to say that, but that tells the YouTube algorithm that people are engaging with the video, and that boosts my video to, YouTube will then promote it. Nefarious NYC popped in with another super chat. I live in New York and feel my desire to embrace facts over rhetoric put me instantly at odds with my progressive friends. Magazines have suggested they distance themselves from me. Advice? I don't know, man. I was baffled to see, I kid you not, I guess I'll call it a fling, right? There's this person that I was sort of dating for a very short amount of time who is high profile and was tweeting fake things about me. And I thought we were friends. And this came at a huge surprise. And I had another friend who's also progressive who just basically started attacking me on Facebook and then refused to respond. And my response to her was, I don't understand why you're yelling at me or mad at me. I thought we were friends. If you want to talk, I'm here. And a couple days later, she got back to me and apologized. And I said, let's just meet up for coffee. Let me buy you a drink and let's talk. And I made some very basic explanations, showed some articles about how the media is driving people apart. And now we're still friends and we hang out. In fact, the surprising thing is I only really hang out with progressives who understand the insanity of what's going on. A friend of mine is a really well-known progressive, dare say it, SJW. I wouldn't say like a great friend of mine, but someone that like I've known for a couple of years that we talk all the time and we get along just fine. We laugh about the nonsense, about how I'm the Nazi and he's the cuck. And we're like, you know what the hell's going on, We're both lefty people. We both agree on most of the same politics. This person is much harder anti-Trump, and I'm more like kind of like let's de-escalate. But we get along. I totally disagree with this person. I think they do things that are wrong, but at the end of the day, like we don't fight, and I appreciate that. You can be a far left progressive. You can hate these statues. You can hate the Trump supporters. You can say they're all racist, whatever you want, so long as you're not a violent person and you're not screaming in people's faces. And that's what this dude's all about. And I'm like, that's great, man. Dude, by all means, tweet your opinion every day. Show up with a bullhorn and say Trump is a Nazi. I don't care, right? It's when you cross that line with a crowbar. That's when all hell breaks loose. And that's when you're making life worse for everyone because you are full of hate. This is what blows my mind. I am just sick and tired of the left saying we are full of love when all they do is yell at other people who they disagree with. I'm like, dude, I have people attacking me on Facebook saying how hateful I am. And I'm like, hateful I am? I'm the one preaching to not be violent and to stop demonizing the other and stop saying the other is this monster. You have no empathy. These people are like, no, we're the ones who have empathy. And I'm like, then have empathy for conservatives who lost their jobs in the economic crash. Have empathy for the people who are terrified of terrorism. And then once you have empathy for these people and you sit down with them and you shake their hand or give them a hug and say, let's talk about what scares you and what concerns you so I can have empathy for your feelings. Maybe, just maybe, you can bring people together and come up with real solutions to end the fear, the hate, and the violence. Instead, all these people want to do, and it's not just the left, there's certainly people on the right who do this too, is blame the other side for causing all these problems. I'm not saying one side is more or less culpable for what's going on. I'm just saying we need to have more empathy and try and understand why people feel the anger they feel. Because whether it's justified, like there's an actual grievance they want addressed, or they've been manipulated through fake news into thinking this, the only way to stop it, especially if it's fake news, is say, hey, I'm sorry you feel that way. What can I do? Do you want to talk? And then guess what? A lot of people are going to be like, yeah, I do. And then you have a conversation about it. And you always got to make sure, if you're on the left or the right, don't get angry. And if someone starts getting angry, don't get smug and be like, why are you getting mad? Just flat out be like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to get you angry. Like, let me get you a coffee or a beer or something. The Heineken did that commercial. I don't know if you remember it, where they had two people build this bar together. And at the end, it showed them both saying things about how they hated each other. One guy was saying that he didn't like trans people and didn't think it was legit, and the person he built the bar with was a trans person, and they feel bad, and they said, you have a chance now. You can leave, or you can sit down for a drink and talk about it. And that's what the video is about. Everyone sitting down, enjoying a nice cold frosty Heineken beer, product plug, and becoming friends. It's hard to hate a group of people when you know who they are personally. Santiago said, "You're so hateful. You're be Korean Hitler's sarcasm." Yeah. I try in many instances to be as honest as possible, right? I'm not gonna deny that there's certainly people who are white nationalists in Berkeley who are jumping the barrier and punching people in the face, instigating some of the fights. But I'm also not going to deny that it was Antifa that showed up to this rally ready to fight. I don't think anyone's innocent. I say this over and over again. Someone's going to have to be the bigger person. Step back, even if it means swallowing your pride, accepting defeat. When you look at Charlottesville, all that rally did was damage these people's ideology and movement, because now everyone hates them. Now everyone's mad about free speech. Now these statues are being torn down left and right. So they lost. Hardcore. That rally did not serve their interests. And that's what it is. Whether or not you want to back down or not. I think, a lot of these rallies on the 19th are being canceled, and I think it's smart. Sometimes to win, you have to retreat. And I think it was Sun Tzu said you need to win the war before you fight. To me, it means a lot of things, but what it really means is don't just show up blind and angry and prepared to fight, because you will not win. You need to know what your plan of action is. You need to know how to get what you want. And showing up, knowing there will be violence, is not going to serve anyone's cause. That being said, we went a little bit long, but if you guys want to drop any last-minute super chats and answer some questions, I will do that. You can go to timcast.com/donate, and you can donate. Right now, I'm really encouraging Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's going to blow up and go through the roof, because I think we're in dire straits, and that means I would like a safe store of value in other places in the US dollar. And I think that should be advice for all of you, too. Don't take this as I don't want to take this is not financial advice to whatever legal extent. I know it's a really, really high risk thing. Bitcoin could drop tomorrow. You could lose everything. I understand that, so that's why I've bought a lot of different things. I'm just looking at what's going on, and I'm like, I got to put some money somewhere in case it gets as bad as it is. Randy Island says, the only way this will get better is for law enforcement to crack down and get tough on all acts of violence and criminality. Explain to me how in these violent clashes only 3 or 4 or 5 get arrested. Justice. That's true, but do we really, so we have two choices then, a police state. Do we want armed National Guard showing up to events and to cities and locking down street corners? Is that what it takes? Is that what we want to live in? I don't know, man. I really don't know. And that's scary, because it seems like the two choices we're looking at are really, really bad. I think one of these factions is going to lose, and it's going to justify the emboldening of one of these other factions. It doesn't matter which one it is, because they're both violent extremists. And then we're going to see this military takeover to justify ending the violence, and it's going to be backed by an ideology that we don't like, and it's going to force people into terrifying situations. That being said, thank you guys so much for hanging out. This has been a impromptu live stream, but I'm going to do a lot more. I figure if I have the time, and it was around 7:30 in New York when I started the stream, I figured, what? I can kick my shoes off and get ready for tomorrow, or I can just talk for about an hour about some of the things I find are important. And this is a way I can start getting into the plan for when I move. So what I want to do is a video every day, a live stream every day, and a podcast once a week. So I really want to up the ante and just kick into high gear. I'm going to be setting up like a little mini studio. I'm going to have some friends who are producing stuff with me, and we're going to do a lot of conversations, talk with everybody in the live stream. We're going to do a podcast which will be recorded, and then we're going to have some exclusive content. Anything I do that's news related, like on the ground breaking news reporting or stories, will always be free, and support will always come through super chat and donations, because I don't believe in creating a paywall for knowledge. I want to make sure everyone knows all of the important things, but there will be like a premium back end for more comedic stuff. I might get my brother involved, who I have two brothers, and they're both very, very funny people, so we might do something that's a bit more loose, and that will be like a premium thing for everybody. But stay tuned. In a couple weeks, I will be moving to a new location and getting all of this set up. And on the 21st, I will be covering the solar eclipse. And I'm trying to figure out ways to live stream the eclipse as well as produce a video for it. So that would be really cool. That being said, thank you all so much for watching. One last time, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you didn't. I'm on Twitter at Timcast and timcast.com/donate to donate. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you all for the super chats. And I will see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. And maybe, just maybe, I'll do another live stream. But I also might fly to get ready for this eclipse stuff. So we'll see what happens. Adios.